In Orlando.
No.
Yes.
Why not?
My name is Mona Lisa Wallace. I'm from the San Francisco chapter of the National Organization for Women. I'm also on the board. I'm the Pacific Coast Director. And I really do feel that this is a very special conference this year. And it's very exciting to introduce to you today this entirely new project, or not even project, but direction that the National Organization for Women is now taking. So as some of you might remember from the last conference, we decided that we were going to now change the way we operate to do something about the resolutions. So as many of you know, the resolutions that come out of these conferences, the decisions that we collectively make as a body during the conference drive the ideological and the political work of the organization throughout the year. And many of us have become frustrated because we have these wonderful resolutions and we wonder, well, since the last year, the last conference, what have we done? How can we measure our success? How can we identify what we need to do and get it done? And so what we've done is we've created this national action program. And I'm here today to talk to you about that. Let's see. What's this first slide? Should we go to the first slide?
Yeah.
Oh, that is the first slide? Okay. So anyway, this particular part of the National Action Program is the Protect Immigrant Rights Committee. And this is a brand new committee for us. Monica and I and Joycelyn, we are also part of the Women of Color Caucus and the Combating Racism team here on the National Now Board. And we thought specifically we need to focus in on immigrant rights, not only because in today's political climate with the Muslim ban, but because we have had an ongoing problem of the criminalization of women and girls simply for not having the right paperwork. And we've had some incredibly tragic violence against young women for just wearing a hijab. It's got to stop. And as an organization, we're trying to pull together to do something about that. So today you're going to learn a little bit about the sanctuary movement, and we can also talk a little bit about the bills that are right now before Congress having to do with penalizing cities for being sanctuary cities. So let's see. The other 5 campaigns, in case you want to know about those, there's the Ratify the ERA, Protect Immigrant Rights, Advance Voting Rights, Mobilize for Reproductive Justice, and we also have another exciting one called End the Criminalization of Trauma. So that's a really beautiful turn that the feminist movement has made. Is we've discovered that it's kind of one of the fun conversations. We're like, oh, prostitution, should it be legal? Should it be not legal? But just discussing prostitution, pornography, again, an ideological discussion that we talk about. But the reality is that the vast majority of women and girls in that industry are children. They're children, and they enter the human trafficking industrial complex as innocent little children. And what happens to them is, instead of being protected or assisted to help heal, they are criminalized and put into the criminal industrial prison complex. And it begins at a very young age. It's very difficult for them to stay in school, and the schools themselves are push them out. So I recommend that you all take a look deeper into the resolution related to that as well. So just a little bit about the facts behind how many immigrants are here in the United States. The estimate is 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. More than half of them are women and girls. We also have to keep in mind that this country has always relied on a certain amount and flow of immigration, and this economy relies on these workers who are not paid a fair wage. And so as we see let's go to slide 6 maybe. So as we see the situation today for these women and girls without the documentation that they need to be safe, some of the tragic and difficult obstacles that they have to face are that they cannot seek police assistance in domestic violence situations for fear of themselves getting arrested. I think we have a story on this slide about a trans woman who was arrested in Texas. It is absolutely imperative that the fundamental structures of our society, education, healthcare, security, police, are accessible by all women and girls. And as we've seen this process of the criminalization of being undocumented, the access to these fundamental safety nets of society are being refused for simply racist reasons. And I think it's important to call it out, that what this really is an issue of racism. Let's see. So should we go to slide 8? Is that slide 8? Yes. So a lot has happened since we made this slide. So not only have these executive orders been coming out of the White House specifically targeting Muslims, but I just, as an aside, it sometimes surprises me because I realize that, as someone who is an Asian American, and someone who has a Buddhist background, it's interesting because the Muslim and the Jewish and the Christian faiths all use the Old Testament. They're all Abrahamic. They're pretty much the same religion. So the rest of the world's like, it seems like, I remember when in Ireland there was all that conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics, and it's like, aren't you all the same religion? Or I guess they're really different. I don't know. But so there have been increasing pressures on cities and so it's not on the slide right now, but what the resolution we'll talk about in a minute has to do with the sanctuary movement. So I'm from San Francisco, and in San Francisco, if someone gets pulled over for a traffic stop, if there's any interaction with the police do not ask for citizenship proof. They do not. And my children in public school, the public schools have sent letters to the parents and send letters home saying, we will not cooperate with immigration, with ICE. We will not cooperate We will not give anybody up or any information. We will not even collect that information. So in San Francisco, it's considered a sanctuary city, and it's kind of a tricky word because it's not truly sanctuary. You're not truly safe, but we're at least not going to cooperate, and that's pretty much the best we could do. And right now, there are 2 bills before Congress that will basically penalize cities that try to offer sanctuary, and by blocking their access to federal grants and things that the cities rely on. So we encourage you locally to look into your local sanctuary movement, and we're going to give you some practical examples and skills for how you can participate in it. So as we know, restaurants and domestic workers are very often undocumented workers. So what we're going to do is provide for you on the now.org website signs and worksheets, not worksheets, but flyers, so that you too can assist in your own city, in your own neighborhood, in participating in offering sanctuary. It's also a wonderful thing that school boards, your local school board, we have our local, state, and federal laws, so you can go to your local school board and we have model policy for that. It came out of Oakland, that your school board can vote to become sanctuary schools. Your school board can vote to do that. It's a scary thing if you're going to be denied your federal funding, but your school board can do that. It can decide, as it did in Oakland, and in San Francisco, it can decide to offer sanctuary, and that means they don't collect citizenship data on their students. Okay.
That was legislation from Oakland or San Francisco?
Oakland. San Francisco also has that, and all that is available on the now.org website.
Right, thanks, Marlisa. Good morning. My name is Monica Weeks. Who else thinks it's way too early? Yeah, no, just me. All right, I didn't say it.
Women are up and working.
My name is Monica Weeks. I'm the president of DC Now, and I'm also a national board member. I sit on this committee, and I'm going to start a little game. It's the fact or fiction. I'm going to do it like the fact or fiction game. All right, so I will read a statement, and then you yell back at me whether it's fact or fiction. You ready?
Don't have to raise your hand.
No, it's grassroots. We're all about yelling and, individual. All right. You have the answers?
Don't
Let's pretend you don't have the answers. Immigrants hurt our economy because they don't pay taxes.
Donald doesn't.
Fiction.
We already forgot the right word.
Fiction. Immigrants definitely pay taxes. Oh, good, we have a little thing. Yes, immigrants collectively pay taxes between $90 and $140 billion a year in taxes, and a recent study found that undocumented immigrants paid almost $12 billion in taxes in 2012 alone. And a lot of the times, if they don't get a certain immigration status, then they're not able to collect Social Security, so they're paying into a system that they don't even benefit from.
Correct. Taxes.
Yes, yes. All right, next. Question 2, as more undocumented immigrants enter into the U.S. illegally, crime rates increase. Fiction, yes. You're not cheating, right?
No, it's in there.
Fiction, there's no evidence immigrants commit crimes at a higher rate than anybody else. In fact, crime rates are lower in immigrant communities. And we're going to go into that later, but definitely I think part of what's been going on with this hysteria on immigrants is that people feel like their jobs are being taken from them. So I think this is one of the ways that we try to justify that. Question 3, within 10 years of arrival, almost 75% of immigrants are fluent in English. Yay! According to a 2015 study, most immigrants are fluent in English after 10 years. However, demand for English classes for adults far exceeds the supply. That's really good, right? Maybe that's something Now can take up, part of our immigration protection campaign. Could have, look at this collaborative room. And question 4, Mexicans make up the largest pool of immigrants coming into the U.S. Ooh, we're divided.
No.
I don't see anybody looking down right now, so I know you're not. Fiction. Most immigrants entering to the U.S. are from Asia, specifically China and India. This has been a consistent trend since 2013. And question 5, the number of illegal immigrants is increasing. Illegal immigrants. Fiction.
Why are you using the word illegal rather than
Right.
undocumented? Because it's not illegal, they're not.
I know, that's why I'm emphasizing it. It's on purpose, because it's a gamist factor fiction. So we're doing it on purpose. Of course, when we talk about immigrants, and who their status is unknown, they're undocumented. But for the purposes of the game, to be snarky, we were using illegal. We like to put a little sass sometimes, so we're just not reading it. Fiction. It's not only in decline, but the number of undocumented people living in the U.S. is at its lowest point since 2003. Additionally, the number of illegal immigrants here has fallen every year since 2008. All right, so what's now doing to work on immigration rights? As we mentioned earlier, this issue is not new. Mona Lisa definitely talked about that, and now's engagement is not new with it as well. With this campaign, we're going to continue to build upon now's strong history advocating for the rights of immigrant women, including but not limited to the founding of the National Coalition of Immigration Women's Rights in 2013, participation in nationwide demonstrations that demand comprehensive immigration reform, and support of Senator Masi Hirono's 2013 amendment to Bill S-744, which provided an equitable scale for work that focuses on industries dominated by women. So, Mona Lisa mentioned the sanctuary movement. So the U.S. has had this proud tradition since the 1980s, where we would protect and support Central American refugees fleeing violence. And a new sanctuary movement is arriving in the form of sanctuary cities, counties, states, and school districts, where local agencies follow all local requirements, but also exercise their sovereign jurisdictional authority to refuse to interrogate people about their immigration status on behalf of ICE. Just like Mona Lisa said, the city of Oakland implemented that policy for the immigrants living in their city. So this movement includes sanctuary restaurants and sanctuary homes, in which employers of restaurant workers and domestic workers, again, comply with all laws, but also respect their immigrant workers' dignity, human rights, and constitutional rights. This new sanctuary movement is inspired by and affirms the rights of asylum and freedom of movement as recognized in the U.S. Declaration of Human Rights. So with this
United Nations, the U.S. is not.
Oh, sorry, the U.S., yes, sorry, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, yeah, that's right. The U.S. doesn't have a Declaration of Human Rights, and certainly not this Trump administration are we going to. So it is in this spirit that the National Action Program is building out its Protect Immigrant Rights campaign. So this is going to support chapters across the country that are looking to get involved with the issue and help provide you with some direction on how to support immigrants in your community. So the campaign will put a feminist lens on immigration, and it will place emphasis on the specific abuses faced by immigrant women, as such as the Muslim ban, like Mona Lisa mentioned. Women are being targeted for wearing hijab, the incarceration of undocumented immigrant families, and a decrease in the reporting of assaults by undocumented women for fear of deportation, as well as the challenges women in particular face when trying to get a work visa. The campaign will encourage its activists and leaders to mobilize around the sanctuary movement. So it includes sanctuary restaurants, schools, and cities. And we're actually working with the Restaurant Opportunity Center United, which is an organization that works with the 1.1 million workers, Latino mostly workers who work in the restaurant industry. And we will also raise awareness of resources available to legal and undocumented immigrants. So for example, I'm sure you've seen the ACLU Know Your Rights initiative. They've had great infographics and fact sheets and materials on that, and other tools that can help protect immigrants and immigrant communities. So how are we going to do this? We're going to engage on social media. We're going to spread the word and educate others. And we're going to let them know what's going on around the country. And that's where we need your help. Recently, through our social media channels such as Twitter, we were able to engage over 80,000 people about our new partnership with Rock United and activist mobilization on May Day. So that was really exciting. The National Action Program has also created tools and educational resources for our activists so folks can learn where to get involved. So for example, there's a step-by-step guide on how to reach out to your favorite restaurant and encourage them to sign up with the Sanctuary Restaurant Movement. We also have info briefs that explain the feminist lens on immigration. And then finally, and most importantly, the National Action Program is working with our allies to build a strong and powerful coalition of immigrant rights activists. So on May Day, now announced its partnership with Rock United, as I mentioned before. It's the labor and immigrants' rights organization that focuses on the 1.1 million immigrants who work in the restaurant industry. And we've also begun coordinating with and lifting up the group of the work of groups like Women Workers Rising. So in DC now we're actually working on the Sanctuary Restaurants movement. And so basically what we did was we took the National Action Program's great information, their action toolkit and their social media and info briefs and all that information, and we brought it to the Now meeting, DC Now meeting, and we said, this is something National is working on. You know, this is something we can work with our sisters across the US to make happen. And DC Now had actually worked with Rock United. Diana Ramirez is based in DC now. She's the director of Rock United on the minimum wage campaign. So it's another great initiative that they have going. And so basically we brought this to our members and said, well, I'm campaigning right now. I can't work on this, but, and we've got some officers and members over there who are working on great stuff, and we said, who wants to do this? And so we had a few members who were like, this is really interesting, I want to work on this. One woman was like, I'm an immigrant, I want to be involved in this. And so now what they've done is set a target of 5 restaurants that they want to sign up every month. And when restaurants have come back to them and said, I don't know how I feel about this, the word sanctuary, like Mona Lisa brought up, it can be kind of controversial, you know. We were able to email Joya and her team, and we got back some great information and resources, and they were able to direct us to Rock United as well. So definitely encourage you all to get involved with this. If we can find, you know, one restaurant or one sanctuary city or county for immigrants in our community, then that makes all the difference, right? So. Yes.
How do you make a restaurant a sanctuary? I don't understand the concept.
So that's actually in the, do we have that up, the toolkit and action brief, info brief?
Well, in a sentence, could you say, do people know what a sanctuary restaurant is? I don't.
So yeah, so basically we have cards and we go and talk to the restaurants and we say, you know, this is the issue. We want your workers to feel safe and like they have a safe space. They don't have to worry about somebody calling them out or calling ICE, because that's a huge worry in the immigrant community for undocumented workers. And so what you can do as a patron of the restaurant is say, I care very deeply about this issue. I would love if you would sign up to be a part of this movement. And so they can actually, what you can do is leave them a card and then leave them the fact sheet that the team's prepared. And then what you can do is follow up. So like our team, DC Now, our group of people are basically going to restaurants and they're giving this pitch to their favorite restaurants, and then they leave the information and then they call or they walk back and they follow up. And then what they get is like a sticker for their window. And so, yeah, and so they can see other restaurants that are on that are in the initiative as well on the website.
So then what? Excuse me.
So then
Do they not report their workers? Is that what they?
What is the restaurant pledging to do?
Right.
So just like Mona Lisa brought up, that ultimately, at the end of the day, if a city or government officials are going to bring in ICE, right? There really is nothing you can do except go through a judicial process and go through, you know, getting a lawyer and doing all that. Or just, yeah, you should probably better. Yeah, but.
So the Sanctuary Restaurant Project is one of many ways you can assist in your local area. So how about if I put a pin in sanctuary restaurants for a second and go back to the overall, because I think we need to clarify a little bit what the whole.
Sorry, I had two specific questions for Monica
Oh,
before we
okay.
go back to the general. I'm from Florida, and in Florida, what happened after Trump hired the 10,000 people was that they went to Presidente supermarkets and arrested the women who went shopping.
Oh,
So it is a Hispanic chain of supermarkets catering to Hispanic people. It was a total surprise. There was nothing that could be done. Where I come from, I think if you have sanctuary restaurant in your window, ICE is going to come to you. And they better have a closet where they conceal the worker when ICE walks in the door, or else they shouldn't have that sticker on. My other concern, which is totally other, is the Service Employees International Union is the other big group that's working on minimum wage, and I was wondering if this campaign has reached out to them as allies. Those are my two questions.
So I think the second question wasn't, don't they also, the same group is also working on minimum wage campaigns?
So SEI is the union, and then Rock United is working on the.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But I was going to let me just talk just a second, 'cause I want to clarify this. And this was my big concern about this whole sanctuary conversation, because the restaurant is just one tiny sliver of what we can do. There's model policy to bring to your local school board, and that really is a very effective thing. Letters that go home so that the parents are still sending their kids. And then as an attorney, I want to explain a little bit. So the United States does not recognize this, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations recognizes asylum and movement as basic, fundamental human rights. And when, and then as you saw from the list of all these cities around the country that recognize themselves as sovereign cities, as being able to pass their own laws within their own borders. And so that it's really another question of constitutional rights. Like, what is the sovereign right of your local governance? Because your influence on governance is more local than it is national. I don't know how many of you voted for Donald Trump, but who represents you is more likely going to be the people on your school board or your supervisors in your city. And those are the people you can talk to about being sanctuary. And I think we still need to do some work on defining sanctuary, because it's a bit of a misnomer. So what it basically means is you're not cooperating unless you have to. So if you have someone in your home, for example, who's undocumented, and ICE comes to your door, what do you do? So we have a fact sheet on the website to know, what do you do when they say, can I come in? No. Or I would like to see your warrant. So you don't let them in. You don't have to answer questions without your lawyer. You don't have to let them in your house. So for people who have who do domestic work, the home or business that employs them can get this fact sheet and understand themselves how they can, without themselves getting arrested, following the law, just cooperate as little as possible in the process of the racist execution of racist laws against undocumented women and girls. So we don't have, and what we have now going on at the federal level. So certain states like North Carolina and Texas said, no more sovereignty to you towns, like Miami, how dare you? San Francisco, how dare you? Your local city or town is being refused the right to make its own decisions about how it wants to handle its children in its school system. They are saying that at a federal level, they're going to block all the states and all the cities and everyone from offering sanctuary. And so that is really a major shift in how our country operates and what the sovereign rights are of your local government, your state government, and it's all being handed down at the federal level. So that's what we're facing. And so this, the restaurant program is just one tiny sliver. It has to do with how we all need to become educated on how we're supposed to interact with the police, I'm sorry to say. Yes?
I too am from where Joan is in Palm Beach County in Florida. And our public school, Palm Beach County at that level, the public schools came out with, I think, what we're calling welcoming cities.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the same, I'm from Delray Beach, and I have an appointment with the commissioner because I want to make Delray a welcoming. Now, I'm
Is it
not,
possible for you to talk into the microphone, because this is really important information. I'd like to make sure, and also, I would like to recap what Joan was talking about. Also, she made up some really good points. So I don't know if maybe Joan wants to bring that up. Also, and even at the plenary when we're talking about voting for this resolution, I think those are important things to bring up, especially about the issue of would a sticker trigger more attention.
Okay, my name is Arlene Houston. I'm with the Palm Beach County chapter. And in our county, at the county level, the school district already declared itself, and Joe, maybe you can help me.
Welcoming. Yeah.
Welcoming. We're using the term welcoming. And as I said, I have an appointment with I live in Delray Beach, and in that city, I've already notified all 5 of the commissioners. They can't meet together, and I'm meeting one-on-one to make Delray, to have a resolution for Delray to become a welcoming city. And I want to learn the finer points as to a resolution instead of an ordinance, as to welcoming instead of sanctuary, so that I'm prepared to discuss these things. So that's what I'd like to learn. Thank you.
I think that's a very important distinction, and I think that the term welcoming is beautiful. And I think it maybe be more accurate than the term sanctuary, since we can't truly offer sanctuary. So thank you for
what
sharing
is
that.
sanctuary as a legal term, though? Do you have a definition for that?
That's the point. So what we're seeing at a couple states have already done this, and what's before Congress now is the idea that that the sovereign right, the right of local government or state government to decide which federal laws to enforce or not enforce, that is being questioned. So where, and I do think it's a very important point that you also made, having to do with what's an ordinance and how, so every local government operates a little differently. So where you are locally, typically there's a school board that manages the public school system. So that school board will have monthly meetings or regular meetings that you can attend, and you can also talk to the board members and offer them a copy of model policy. And I would like to see the welcoming language of the version, because we have the sanctuary language one, but it would be great to see that. And model policy is just an example of what you can show the directors so that they can just change the city name and apply that there
I
too.
have that because West Palm Beach already has a resolution about being a welcoming city, and I have it on my computer. I can send you that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll be sure to post that on the website.
Barbara Erich pushes.
Yeah, hi. So just repeating my questions with the microphone, sorry. My first question was that in some areas of the country, labeling your business as a sanctuary business could draw ICE attention, and that the resolution should include other options. I promised myself I wasn't going to work on the wording of resolutions this time, but as considering local circumstances or sanctuary or welcoming or whatever, because we're not all as advanced as DC. The other part of my question was that the Service Employees International Union in our state is the prime organizer of in-home healthcare workers, and as such would be a natural ally.
What's the name of that organization?
SEIU, Service Employees International Union.
Yeah, that's actually a good point that you bring up. I know Rock United, when we were working on the $15 minimum wage, definitely worked with SEIU and Unite here to organize workers on that. And they're picking it back up, and it's going to be something we're working on the next legislation, or the next session. But yeah, I definitely wrote it down, and we need to see if there are any other, because Unite here and other unions would be great people to partner with.
Hi, my name is Ravina Raja, and I'm from Houston, Texas. I saw on your map that you're showing Houston as a sanctuary city. We actually have a lawsuit against our state Governor Abbott, which is SB4, because that states that the police have the right to show your papers. And so it's kind of a real conundrum, because what's happening in Houston is the sheriff is opposing what the state is asking. And I think you were talking about that, where do the, what are the rights of the city? So there are raids taking place in Houston where people are getting picked up. And I agree with the lady that talked about the sanctuary restaurants as being something that, I haven't seen that in Houston. I think that would be more of an issue where they would come to those restaurants, even though I think 90% of the restaurant population, I used to be a restaurant owner, are illegal. That's undocumented workers. So I don't know how one gets, yes, you can do your personal protest, but it's really, to me, I find this really difficult, and our mayor, he won't, even though he's filed this lawsuit, he himself will not call Houston a sanctuary city. So I think, I just wanted to kind of point that out about
And
Houston.
the state of Texas passed a law that basically banned its cities
SB4.
from offering sanctuary.
I find what's interesting about this issue too is we were seeing it like after the Paris Climate Agreement, when mayors decided to sign on and say, well, we'll still uphold it. I think we're in a really interesting place where, like Mona Lisa said, we have to hold our government officials accountable. And so part of that, and actually this is a great little plug, we're doing a practical activism workshop where we'll talk about lobbying your legislatures at 11:30. Surprise, I'm on that one as well. So if you feel like hearing me again, come to that. But I think it's really important, like Mona Lisa said, we have to hold them accountable, and we have to show them that this is what we want. And yes, I think, like Joan said, DC is an asylum. Rock United is headquartered in DC. San Francisco is, also a very different New York City. But as citizens, as constituents, it's our duty to say this is what we want from our legislatures, that they will not call restaurants out, they will not call cities out. We expect better of them, so. Joycelyn.
I'm Joyce Morris. I'm on the national board and on this committee, and I just was overwhelmed and said I'm not sitting at the table for the workshop, so I'm interfering from here. My concern is that we do need a legal definition of sanctuary, because, and I'm a TV person, so I watch all kinds of junk, but a church can declare that they're a sanctuary, and people can come and live in there and be protected by the congregation and maybe even the police department against ICE. And that's not what the restaurants, like they're saying, if you put a sticker on the window of the restaurant, that alerts ICE that there are people in there that are undocumented. And we don't want to do that. So we need to get a better legal definition of sanctuary. And Mona Lisa, do you have one that you looked up, or?
I absolutely agree with you, and I'm very excited about the term welcoming. And I'll tell you, so we're butting up against a lot of different concepts here, the sovereignty issue, and churches offer sanctuary not by law, but by culture. So our culture is saying, and as feminists, what the feminist movement is it's a cultural shift training ground. We're here to change culture. And so in the sense that sanctuary is something that is a cultural sanctuary. So police or whatever might feel guilty or wrong about busting into a church. It's really not a legal sanctuary. There is no safe place for undocumented people in this country right now. And all we really can do is welcome and protect and know our rights to resist in a legal, safe way. And I do think that it's a very good point about maybe not putting the sticker on the window, but still training the restaurant owners and management and staff on how to deal with ICE when they come knocking at the door.
So a lot of this language is on the websites and the action briefs and info briefs, how to talk to restaurants and cities and whatnot. Joya Taft-Dick, actually, you have the treat to meet her. She's new, a few months ago. She's the National Action Program Manager, and I think she just wanted to clarify something.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll use that. No, we really love this feedback. I mean, these campaigns have been around for a couple of months, and we're rolling them out, and getting your thoughts is really, really helpful. I just want to also say, with regards to the sticker in the window, I completely hear that concern, and we've actually heard that before. I think the idea is you're certainly not required to put anything in your windows. That was just something that they offered if they wanted to create this sort of welcoming sense. But it really is to plug these restaurants into a network and to provide resources for both the staff, the owners, in terms of knowing your rights. I know they provide webinars. These are ways that you can protect yourself and your staff. Again, always towing the line that they're not doing anything illegal necessarily, but it's a way to plug into a network. But again, I think some of these concerns raised are legitimate, and I'm taking notes. That's all I'm saying.
I'm Karen Van Hooft from that hotbed of immigration problems of Arizona, and I wanted to give you some additional information, right now not related particularly to sanctuary, but something has happened in the past couple of weeks in Arizona that affects the immigration issue. Does everybody know what DACA is? And who the DACA students are? Okay, appeals court, it was the appeals court in Arizona, decreed that DACA students can no longer qualify for in-state tuition at the state universities. That has been, a question, and we had gotten them in-state tuition, we thought, in Arizona. And that, this causes a huge jump in tuition, and there are people like seniors right now at Arizona State, where I work, who are, wondering if they're going to be able to continue on and finish their education. So that's an issue. Everybody should be aware of things like this happening on the state level too, not just the federal, what's going on the federal level. I'm personally going to there's all sorts of organizations that set up scholarship funds, sort of on a private level or separate from, the state funds that can be administered as for scholarships cannot go to DACA students. So other funding for scholarships to help make up the difference. That's one thing. And the other thing is just some good news actually from Arizona. There's 2 important court cases going on right now, and we like to give good news when there is good news in Arizona. Our famous Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who he's on trial right now for disobeying the federal order. And I hope he gets sentenced to some jail time. I would say in Tent City, but Tent City has actually the new sheriff, because he's the former sheriff now, thank goodness. The new sheriff is getting rid of Tent City, but I would love to put Sheriff Joe in Tent City during the summer we're having. The other one is that they're relitigating, and this is ethnic studies programs, it's also related. Right now they're in trial, a new trial on the ethnic studies issue in the Tucson schools, hoping to get that not illegal anymore so they can restart ethnic studies down there. So think of some of these actions that you can take personally, such as contributing to a scholarship fund, if you know of one, to help these, because this is not going to just stay in Arizona, the thing with the DACA students. They're going to try to get that.
Karen, I think we should, I just want to say really quick that this is all brand new, doing this this type of workshop and the National Action Program, and I'm so excited to be able to get this amazing feedback from the grassroots, because we are a grassroots movement, and all of your ideas and all of your local issues this is the place where we can really come together and share our wisdom. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, I'm Anna Tempana from North Carolina, from Winston-Salem. And we have a large immigration contingency there. So our chapter came to I go to a social justice church. It's a United Church of Christ. And we learned about a woman named Irma Garcia. And Minerva Garcia is a woman who has been in our country for 17 years. She came as a widow with a child who was left blind from cancer as a baby. So she came to the United States because in Mexico, people with disabilities get no help, no schooling, no anything. So she came here, she had 2 children, him and another child, who died of leukemia. So she's been here for 17 years, owns her home, has worked as a supervisor in a company. She speaks good English. She now has 2 small children, and every month she makes a 2-hour trip to Charlotte to report to immigration. She's doing everything right, except now the rules have changed. And she was told that she would be deported now, like today. So they insisted she had to buy a ticket to Mexico. So our chapter and the churches in Winston-Salem and an organization called NC Warren, we all rallied around her. We collected over 12,000 signatures at change.org. We got signatures from our local community leaders, some of the city council people. We also raised money online. There's not GoFundMe, but there's another one. I think it's We Care. And online, we raised several $1,000s there. If she's forced to go to Mexico with her 2 small children, they cannot go to school because they are American citizens. So, and her blind son is 20 now. He's employed at Industries for the Blind. He's a beautiful singer. He's having a great life here. And so I'm just going to destroy the family. So I don't know what's happening today. But it's been really great for our chapter and for our community to rally around Minerva and be a stand for her. And regardless of what happens and where she has to go, she's had an experience of people really coming together and being a stand. There is a church in Greensboro that is providing sanctuary to a Hispanic grandmother who has 4 college daughters, grandchildren, and an American husband, and she's being deported too. So.
Can I talk from here?
Yes.
Why is it she's been in the country 17 years and hasn't applied for citizenship? Is that something we need to be talking about?
It takes a long time.
But 17 years?
Oh, yeah.
Mexico. Well, I mean, actually, and you can speak. Did you want to? Oh, about how? Yeah, no, I was actually. That's what I was going to say. If you didn't mind speaking. No, it's your experience. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, so my name is Ravina Raja, and I'm a Uruguayan citizen. I've been in the United States for 20 years and I'm still not a citizen. I'm trying, but you just don't want me. Anyway, so I was going to say about once you enter the country legally, it's very hard to correct illegally or undocumented. It's very hard to correct that status. Every now and then there have been some amnesties. I think the last one was during the Bush administration. But what happens is it's I think a lot of times because of, I think when you're here undocumented, you live in constant fear. Every little mistake, I mean, when I was here as a teenager, I felt like I couldn't do like teenage stuff because a mistake by me meant that I would get deported. Whereas a mistake by an American teenager would mean like, oh, maybe.
And you were on a visa.
I mean, but when my visa wasn't, I had like that, like I wouldn't drive because if something happened, even if I had a driver's license, something that I did wrong would mean that I would be sent back like to Uruguay. And I think when it comes to amnesties, what happens is like you live in such fear that you're scared to come forward and say, I am an undocumented immigrant, I want to apply to this. So there's a lot of people that keep being left behind throughout those processes because they are scared to go forward. And I think sometimes the lack of community resources of people who support you and who will guide you through that legal process means that people like her might have skipped the opportunity to apply for citizenship because it's really difficult and you do live in fear of being sent elsewhere.
I would say there are lots of great, and maybe this is something we can add to the program too, just around education. There are more books now, there are more organizations, there are social justice lawyers. We have a good friend who worked at Make the Road and they would help immigrants. So we need to connect to these organizations and these resources to let people know that they're, I mean, unfortunately with the current administration, I'm not too optimistic, especially now that we just saw that until the Supreme Court hears for the Muslim ban, for example, that they're going to be, you know, weddings canceled and family reunions, unfortunately, until, you know, the Supreme Court meets, I think they said September, October. But there are resources and more people are speaking out about it, well-known figures. There's a book called In the Country We Love. It's by Diane Guerrero. She's a Colombian, she was born in Colombia and they came to the US when she was a baby. And she wrote a book, and she realized she wrote a book because basically what happened was her parents were deported, and at around 13 or 14 years old, she was left without parents, and nobody in the system followed up with her. So she was forced at that young age to find, luckily she had family friends and some distant family that were able to help her. And in the book, at the end, she said, you know, the reason why I decided to write this was because there haven't been, because people live in constant fear. And so now we're seeing a lot more organizations popping up. I got to meet Jared Andrade. She's a Bolivian undocumented person living in the US, and she just received the Emily's List, like Women of Courage Award, because she started the Dream Project. And so she's helping lots of dreamers get resources. So these are the kind of organizations and resources we should be working with. One of you mentioned the petition. You mentioned getting a petition going. We should be utilizing change.org and Ultraviolet and MoveOn.org to get petitions going and being more active. So there are definitely other ways to think outside. Like Joya said, it's a new program, so all this feedback is really helpful and appreciated.
I think it's really important to keep in mind the big picture. And you cannot talk about the race issue without also addressing the class issue. And that's here. There is a massive financial incentive for large corporations, for the industrial food complex, ADM, and all of these GMO farms all across America. Who's picking those crops? Who's working for $2 an hour? Who is working and without having to provide education for their children or health care if they get hurt, because then they just get rid of them. These are throwaway people. Throwaway people. Refusing health care, refusing education to children, there's a reason for that. There is a reason for that, and it is money. Lots and lots of money. And the people who pay people $4 an hour to clean their house or clean their business or scrub toilets, it's easy to ignore the financial incentive. And then we cannot ignore, although they hide them far away in the deserts and where we can't see them, but there are massive prisons, corporate-owned prisons, that are profiting by imprisoning people of color. I went to a protest at the Corcoran prison in California. 30,000 prisoners were on hunger strike. I talked to the parents there in that 110-degree heat where they were walking in that march. You drove past miles and miles of chicken farms where the chickens never see the light of day. I thought when I came up to that prison that I was going to see some sort of, I don't know, Bastille or something, but I drove past it because it looked like more chicken farms where they kept human beings in concrete, young men. And one of the marchers was an elderly Mexican American, and he told me, when I was a kid, I worked in those fields over there, those fields that were dry now. I worked in those fields. And now they figured out how to make money off of us working in those fields. And now that they do it a different way, they're making money by keeping us in these prisons. So we need to keep an eye on what's really happening here. It benefits corporate America to keep a large population of undocumented workers who are willing to work for nothing, who will not use our police and our education or healthcare system. It benefits them. And so we have to keep our eye on the money and on the real issue here. Thanks.
So yeah, let's take your question, and then we have one more slide, and we can wrap up because it's already a little after 9:30. But this is a great conversation.
Yeah, you took the direction that I was going to take with the financial stuff. I think the emotional appeal and then the fear that we talk about, a lot of people don't have a heart for this, but the financial is really the way we need to go. The economic benefit to states like North Carolina and Florida and California, Arizona, these places need these workers. My state of Nebraska was the meatpacking industry. So I think we should redefine the word undocumented, and undocumented should mean the financial benefits into Social Security. Those owners are not paying. They're not documenting the Social Security they would pay. They're not documenting the taxes or any of the benefits to an employee. We should redirect the word undocumented to that kind of financial documentation. But in any case, I wanted to say, though, it's irrational also that the federal government would say we want less government and they would be more intrusive in our local communities to make a rational argument if they are capable of internalizing such a thing. But my question actually is,
we don't live in a rational or a fact-based society anymore, which I find terrifying and humorous.
In the political situation, the George Lakoff book, Don't Think of an Elephant, they say that voters don't vote for rational reasons. They don't even vote for their own best interest. It's the frame through which they look at the world. And so being rational isn't helping us necessarily. But somebody has to do it. But my question is about 287G. You're aware of 287? Is that a national policy? The one that has your local governments, allows them to do law enforcement for ICE, like county government, local? That's not just a Florida thing, is it? 287G specifically? National. We need to know more about. So people are nodding an affirmation about 287G, a national law that makes local law enforcement officers doing ICE work with no money from the federal government, which is really important to know. So those folks are taking money, having expectations of your local law enforcement for no extra pay, so they're not doing that legal law enforcement in your community. But so this is why we need to refuse this in our local police departments and counties. And so you know about 287G or you don't?
Yeah, so in DC, in DC, actually, we hired a new police chief, and that was one of the first things that he did was enact 287G, and he got so much shit from the local community and organizations that basically they had to scale back, and the mayor said, he was just, obviously worried about her in the council's re-election at some point, that we can't support this anymore, and so they scaled back doing that. But even in DC, with the new police chief, they were going for it.
Well, that's the one we need to be looking for.
Yeah, until their constituents heard them, because remember, even police chiefs, they're going to be, nominated or put into positions by mayors, like that's.
Well, police chiefs get more money from arresting people, transporting them, keeping them in the jail. There's more money for the justice system, for the judges, and all part of that system. It's not just the jail; it's every aspect of that is a larger budget for your law enforcement.
And this is a great conversation. And what we did in DC now too was one of the things that we said was instead of directing those funds, because when we talked about like paid family leave and all these things, we were looking at a bigger budget issue, and we said instead of, it was Bill SB 140, instead of directing funds to hiring more policemen to do that, we basically lobbied to get the money to go to the NEAR Act. So if you're familiar with the NEAR Act at all, it's the Neighborhood Engagement for Achieving Results. It's going all across cities. Chicago and New York have seen, certain parts of Chicago and New York have seen a decrease in crime by like 70% because money was taken from, instead of staffing police, it was put into the local community on how to do nonviolent direct action. It went into mental health services. So what we were able to do by saying we're pissed off, we don't want this to happen, we were able to take the money that they were going to get from staffing 1,500 more police officers, and we were able to put that, it was like $26 million into funding the NEAR Act.
And affordable. By the way,
And
she just said, how come you didn't say your name? Patricia Plantamira, Seminole, Florida, in case anybody wanted it. Somebody just said, what was your name? So, thank you. Sorry.
I have one question. We take her attendance.
No, are we supposed to do roll call? No. Okay. Oh,
We
no.
can do sign-up sheets for people attending the workshop.
No. Why, you want to do that as a resource? We could do that.
Something?
Yeah.
Because my thoughts are, we're getting so much good information from out here.
Yes.
Maybe we need to do a workshop under the committee, Joya. Do a
Joya loves
webinar.
when people give her more work.
Do a webinar so that you all can dial in and let
That's
us
a great
know what's
idea.
happening in your community.
Unfortunately, that's a great point, and I don't want to cut off the discussion because I love this more than anything, but unfortunately we do have to get going because we have a whole resolution we have to read.
Just the three of you, yourself included, please just sing out your email address and we can all email you our ideas. That would be a
But-
quick, those that, particularly those of us where you want.
Sure. Why don't we actually direct you to the National Action Program so they can aggregate all the information, and then we can work as a committee. Joya, you want to?
And that email is?
Joya, is it, what is it again? I don't remember.
We have the action program at now.org.
Action program at now.org, all lowercase. And thank you guys for this lovely discussion. We're going to go through the resolution and then we're going to finish up the rest.
Action program at now.org.
There you go.
And I'll try and get the school board.
All right, I'm hoping most of you are familiar with the resolution process, but on Sunday we'll be voting on resolutions. So each of the National Action Program areas will have a resolution, and there's some other amazing ones out there too. So I'm going to read these aloud, and on Sunday you'll have an opportunity to help edit this resolution so we can bring our good ideas, our improved grammar skills, on Sunday. So I invite you all to come and help edit this. So I'm going to read it to you now. Take a copy with you and think about how you might want to make changes on Sunday. Therefore be it resolved that NOW will include in its 2017-2018 National Action Program a campaign to protect immigrant rights that focuses on the unique abuses now faced by immigrant women and children as a direct result of the Trump administration, such as the Muslim ban, the incarceration of undocumented immigrant families in detention centers, and a decrease in reports of domestic and sexual assaults on undocumented women for fear of deportation. And be it further resolved that this campaign will encourage its activists and leaders to mobilize around the sanctuary movement, including sanctuary restaurants, homes, school districts, cities, counties, and states, through partnerships with allied organizations like Restaurant Opportunity Center United, and be it finally resolved that this campaign will raise awareness on the variety of resources available to legal and undocumented immigrants, such as the ACLU's Know Your Rights Initiative, the Immigrant Defense Project's ICE Raid Toolkit, United We Dreams Deportation Defense Cards, and other tools that help protect immigrants and immigrant communities.
Okay, all right, so just please make sure to check out the National Action Program website and page, and make sure to share all the information, look over the resources, and again, if you have any questions or input, you can send them to actionprogram@now.org, and Joya will hand out her cards as well. Thank you all so much for your input and your time. We really appreciate it, and this discussion was more vibrant than you ever could have hoped for. Thank you.
Oh, and the sign-in sheet is with me. It's moving that way. What do you want?